Hi, my name is Kelly McNeil, and I am the Curriculum Program Manager at Arizona State University in the J. Orrin Edson Entrepreneurship and Innovation Institute. I'm based in Lakeland, Florida.
Hi, everyone, and my name is Sandra LaFleur, and I'm both an administrator and an educator at Miami-Dade College. I'm the Director of Change-Making Education and Social Innovation there, and I'm based in Miami, Florida. You might hear some thunder because there's probably our afternoon showers are happening up near Lakeland, where Kelly's at. Kelly and I were paired up to do this work on the leadership theory case analysis assignment. Lucky me. And our focus today is going to be on adaptive leadership.
Lucky me. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty, we should spend a few minutes on an overview of our approach to this assignment and the design of our module, because as you'll see, it is a little different.
So yeah, obviously we have each other. And so we were already given different resources to complete this assignment. And this afforded us the opportunity to leverage Kelly's skills as an instructional designer. She's really good at it, you'll see. And because of that, it allowed us to sort of to design and produce a different kind of learning experience for you here today.
Great. So what we did was we created an interactive platform that holds all of the specific and detailed information that we want to share with you on adaptive leadership. This allows us to present adaptive leadership to you through a conversation that we'll have with each other. Consider this a coffee chat, or perhaps an adult beverage chat, if it's that time of day for you. No judgment. And if you're like me, go ahead and click on the link in the comments below to follow along with the interactive module.
But if you're like me, you don't have to do that right now. You can wait until later because I can't do two things at once and it distracts me. So you can just stay here, listen to us chat about our connections and our experiences. And then after this, we've built in time for you to go and play on the interactive website.
So first, let's give you a quick tour of the site, and then we'll meet back here to chat about our connections and experiences to adaptive leadership. So now I'm going to share my screen, and what you'll see when you click on this link, this is used with a tool called Articulate Rise. A lot of instructional designers and e-learning people use this. Everyone at Arizona State University in the Learning Design Office uses this tool to create interactive e-learning courses. So when you start the course, you will see your progress over on the left-hand side and all of the different categories that are follow along with Northhouse's Leadership Theory and Practice book. You'll have different definitions. There will be interactive images to click on. There are also some videos that are embedded in there, and a variety of resources that we hope you will enjoy.
Great. Awesome. So now that you've been introduced to the site, you can come back here. Like Kelly said earlier, if you want to keep both of them on and open, that's great. If not, you can just come on and bring your coffee and enjoy a beverage as we talk a little bit about adaptive leadership. So Kelly, how would you explain adaptive leadership to someone who has never been introduced to this concept before?
Yeah, well, first, I will say, prepare to be confused, at least if you're like me, because I was a little bit confused, a little bit overwhelmed. There's a lot of information. It goes in just a bunch of different directions. I went and looked up additional readings and different websites, and every time I went somewhere, I felt like I got a new metaphor or a new analogy, several more steps. But the key takeaways that I did learn about it is that it's less about the leader being at the center and more about the leader empowering their followers, a term that we'll actually define later, to bravely take on very tough challenges. What about you, Sandra? What might you add to that?
So like Kelly said, when we read our chapter, and part of the assignment was for us to go deeper and to dig deeper. And at the same time, this isn't a construct, let's say, that's, had decades and decades of research done on it. So it was interesting, a little frustrating for me too, because I kept digging and I kept learning new words and new terms and new constructs. And I think that one specific thing that I'd like to sort of share with everyone as we introduce adaptive leadership is this distinction that I gained from some resources produced by Marty Linsky, who's a scholar. He's scholar, academic, and he has worked with Fitz, who is probably the person most responsible for putting this construct together. He talks about the distinction between authority and leadership. And when we think about the difference between the two, and they're not the same, in his perspective, through his perspective, leadership can come from any position. It has nothing to do, it's not a role, it's not a title, it's an action, it's a process. So technical challenges, which are one of the three different types of challenges that any leader faces, right? You can face technical challenges, technical/adaptive challenges, or adaptive challenges. And adaptive leadership responds to adaptive challenges. So the difference is a technical challenge really requires authority to solve those problems. And that is the domain, as Linsky says, that's the domain of here. It's the head. It's very technical. It's very straightforward. It's operational. But adaptive challenges are the work of here, and I'm pointing down to my belly. So he says adaptive challenges come from here, and adaptive leadership works in this space. And by that, he means from the heart to the gut. So this is about, what is your feeling? What is your belief, your values, your morals? And so when we think about what are adaptive challenges, they're those types of challenges that require this kind of leadership, the kind of leadership that isn't about solving for a technical answer. It might be hard to find the answer, but it's technical. Like there's a factual right answer to this problem, as opposed to adaptive leadership, which does not work in that realm. So I hope I didn't confuse you all, but I think being able to tell the difference or know the difference between authority and technical challenges versus leadership and adaptive challenges was really helpful for me.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Sandra. And she shared an excellent TEDx talk by Linsky, which is actually in the module and the additional links and resources. So if you want to dig more into that, that was a great resource that we were able to find and to share with you.
Yeah. So you heard from both of us that our collective takeaway is that this adaptive leadership construct, it's not about a trait that any one of us can just sort of build on our own, like, oh, let's go practice our adaptive leadership as a specific trait, but rather adaptive leadership is an approach that has a specific outcome. And that outcome is to try to lead a team of people through challenging change, managing change. So Kelly, based on that, knowing that this is really about an approach to leading a group of people, my next question is about when you think of the skills that leaders need in order to lead adaptively, which in essence means being able to create environments and experiences that encourage learning, creativity, and adaptation for their team, what are some of those skills that come to mind for you that leaders need to have to be able to drive adaptive leadership?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think, first of all, just compassion and humility to be able to listen to others. So then willingness to listen to others, to have a love of lifelong learning, to constantly be, seeking. Flexibility is probably another one I would add. It's maybe even kind of a synonym for adaptability, but if in work cultures, I think, I don't know, the last year I've heard the word pivot so many times, but this kind of embodies that. And so I think all of those are really important. And when we get into the behaviors, I think they also will kind of like illuminate some of these skills that you will see and how they tie to the behaviors.
Yeah.
What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I wanted to add and piggyback on some of the ones that you said. I love as someone who I personally like authentic leadership, I feel like that's where I gravitate towards. This idea of compassion and like the emotional side coming through is important to me. Also curiosity. I think leaders that are curious about asking why and not just jumping to conclusions are the ones that engender the kind of environment that will allow people to feel okay expressing their ideas. And then with that comes the willingness to fail. I'll just say this, I work in an environment where I think our people want to believe that they're innovative, but they refuse to accept failure. And they think of it as like the big F word. Whereas I spend a lot of my time just telling my team and asking my students to just go, try that. And if it doesn't work, well, we'll figure it out. And I always say, if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. So authenticity and protecting and keeping safe. I think that the protecting and keeping safe, like you said, draws directly to one of the behaviors that I'm going to ask you about, or that hopefully you'll talk about in the next section. I think being able to let your team know that there's a container and we're going to be okay in here. We're going to be okay to get messy and to be okay with our feelings about the messiness. This kind of alludes to the switch book that we have been reading in our other class, that the emotion, the elephant is real. It's real. So to allow the elephant to be I think is a really important part of being an adaptive leader. So.
Yeah. And to speak to what you were saying about fail, of course, now I've forgotten the phrase, but I recently read something this past week in one of the recent books that I picked up for our other class, the leadership book I was telling you about. And it's about failing forward, which I hear a lot, but it's a phrase of like fail often and fail forward. What's the first one in that?
Fail fast,
fail often and fail forward. Yeah. I thought that was really great. And it happens in K-12 space. So I work with K-12 educators, and that's that environment where they often feel like they have to know everything. And I try to explain to them how, that failing, modeling that for your students, and what kind of leadership that is. So that's really cool. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, now it's my turn to ask a question. So I have to say that it was, we talked about this chapter being annoying and frustrating, and it definitely pushed me. It was like an uncomfortable experience at first, kind of looking at and trying to unpackage everything that was in the readings and the books. And I felt like seeing it as a framework was one thing, but then every time I unpackaged one list of bullet points, I felt like each bullet point had bullet points. It was starting to drive me a little crazy. However, though, as I started reading more about the 6 leader behaviors that are at the heart of this adaptive leadership approach, I did see how they do play an important role once I was able to kind of get some definitions down. So in our interactive RISE model that we created, we did define these and put these into like some flashcards into an interactive format. So we would ask you now to go ahead and hit pause if you're not doing the side-by-side simultaneous interaction. Take a look at lesson 4 out of 6. What are adaptive leader behaviors? While Sandra and I take a little coffee break. All right. So welcome back. We hope you enjoyed that little pause and got a little bit familiarized with the adaptive leader behaviors. So we just want to chat now kind of openly about some of these 6 behaviors, how we connect to them, and how they connect to us in our spaces. So the first one that's on the list, get on the balcony. It frustrated me just seeing it in our textbook, because I didn't even know what it meant, and I kind of kept Googling it and looking for it. It was when I purchased the leadership theory and the one by Northhouse that's referenced, theory and practice, that's underneath that diagram, that I understood this metaphor of the dance floor and getting away from the noise and the chaos of the dance floor, so that you're up above and you're seeing like the big picture of things. And personally, that's one of the ones in the list that I think I identify with as I was sharing with Sandra earlier that I kind of consider it, I've heard the analogy, and I think it's an IT one, where they talk about the forest of the trees. So you can see, if you can't see the forest because you're staring at a tree, so you have to kind of get back. I guess you don't really have the noise aspect, and I think that's more of what the dance floor brings into that. But I definitely agree with that. You need to be able to see everything that's going on. I think our systems thinking work and exercises that we've done kind of showed that to us as well, just how things are connected, and how you can hear different people in different places better if you're not in the middle of it, where you might only be hearing 1 or 2 things. So I really thought that one was good. Looking at the next group of them, kind of towards the end. So the give the work back to the people. This is one that I feel strongly about. And I think recently I've just had a lot more opportunities in my own personal work to be able to work on this. So I have a new team in my curriculum department, and for a while, I was kind of the only one in that department, and I had to kind of do the job of multiple people. I had to wear a lot of different hats, go in and out of a lot of different places. I know it wasn't a sustainable model for me to just do everything all the time. So as I onboarded some new team members and kind of try to create these safe spaces for them to learn and to be able to understand things, now I'm in this environment where I'm able to bring to them some of the work. And when these adaptive situations come up, rather than solve the problems and do the work myself, help them to define these problems, see what they are, and then tackle them. And so I really appreciated that one. The opposite of that is the protect leadership voices from below, which is kind of the last one there. I think that one is a little bit harder for me. I was kind of actually thinking about some specific work scenarios that perhaps I don't do that as much. And part of it has had to do with my scenario where I was doing so many things on my own and just getting it done. And then I knew there were other departments that kind of maybe weren't. And I also knew, because I understood working at a university and working not just a university, but with an institute, I have a major partner stakeholder that like funds our grant. And I'm very aware of all these political connections and like the cultural and social norms. And I sort of like kind of protected that, I think, and maybe didn't, in adaptive leadership, they'll tell you like the idea is to sort of push conflict, to sort of like open up these uncomfortable situations so that everyone has a voice. And I don't know that I've actually done that. Yeah, and that's kind of like, I didn't go over all 6 of them. I know that regulate distress is one that I have to work on, as well as I have a team, because your team looks to you as the leader. I found the regulate distress behavior so interesting because it's not about alleviating all stress. Like, that's not what they want you to do. It's about applying just the right amount to motivate, but not to overwhelm. And it also has to do with you looking inside yourself, because they're going to look to you, you're the model. So if you're going crazy and doing all the things and being in front of them doing that, that's what they're going to see. And I think that's, and I've been given that advice by leaders above me who recognize me and the kind of work I do and my pace, and have kind of like given me that advice of make sure that you're not putting expectations on your team of being at the same pace and at the same, level of distress that you tend to be at, which I'm working on, by the way. That's like, as we get more team members on, that's something that I'm able to take a look at and, again, evaluate and understand that that's not quite sustainable. So yeah, I think that kind of like sums up my thoughts of what I've seen so far.
I think you're hard on yourself. In our previous prep work, Kelly went straight to what I'm not doing well. And I think that's half the battle. And to be identifying and being reflective and being self-aware of what we're not so strong at is already giving us, ample space to make course corrections and to just adapt and learn ourselves. So I think don't be too hard on yourself. I think when we think about these 6 behaviors, I'm just mindful for my work, and I'll just keep this brief, but at work for me, my team has, over the last 4 years, we've been sort of transitioning between either the Office of Academic Affairs, and now we're transitioned over to the Office of Student Affairs, 2 totally different sides of the house in higher education, 2 totally different focus areas, which is a little frustrating because you would like to think that we could, crosswalk ourselves back into the final outcome for students, which is, ultimately student success. And we just see from different angles. But anyway, when it comes to this adaptive behavior list, I think the first 3 are 3 that resonate with me very loudly, because I think adaptive leaders need to be able to get on that balcony. And for me, funny, because for Kelly, it didn't resonate right away, like understood. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, I know what that means. That's like, have that view. Like someone needs to know the lay of the land and just needs to know where we are and where we need to be. And then identify, so the second one is identify the adaptive challenge. I think this one is an understated one because oftentimes we're chasing the wrong problem, or oftentimes we're responding to the wrong conflict or the wrong issue, and then we don't know what's wrong. So taking the time to be able to, again, with your curiosity skills, to peel back the onions and to understand what's really getting in the way for people to manage themselves, their behaviors, right? So, or their fears, like, what is it? And is it technical? Is it, or is it adaptive? Does it have to do with something that's, fixable, like with some skill set that is, concrete, or is it something that we have to talk about in terms of the way people are feeling and believing that they can manage this change? So that leads to that third one, which is to regulate distress. For me, that one, I automatically just went back to the Switch book, and I do love how a lot of our readings are sort of cross-pollinating ideas in our mind. But for me, to shrink the change is how I feel as a leader I'm able to regulate the distress for my team. So it's like, we've got this big thing ahead of us, or we've got this big move to make, or we've just been given this big new thing to adapt to. What does that mean for you? And how can I help shrink that change to make it manageable? So I just need you to worry about this right now. And in that container, I do want to hear your voice. I do want to know what you're thinking. I do want to know what opinions you might have, so long as they're not to go in the completely opposite direction, which is probably not something that we can consider, but I'll listen. We have to go in this direction. And that's the, now I'm skipping over to number 4, which is to maintain a disciplined attention, like keeping your eye on the ball. So I think that when I started to break down through conversation with Kelly what adaptive leadership really was about, it started to make a lot more sense than just having read it the first few times. I read that chapter a few times and it just wasn't jumping off the page. But after our conversation, it really started to make a lot more sense to both of us. So we hope that in this conversation, it's done a little bit of the same for you. It's sort of jogged some ideas, maybe, made some things pop in your mind. And really, this is all the time we have for our chat, our coffee chat on adaptive leadership. We want to give you some extra time to go and play in this awesome site that Kelly's built for us. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kelly to close us out.
Awesome. Thanks, Sandra. Yeah, I had such a great time building this project and learning so much from Sandra. And she keeps bragging on my, that that's just a skill that I know how to do, is make these things. I really would not have done this sort of assignment if I hadn't worked with Sandra and been able to really richly explore all of the materials with her. So I'm very, very grateful that we were able to do this together. And yeah, we hope that you benefited as well and that you learned some things. And please remember to visit the link that we're going to have down there in the YouTube in the description, because that is the time that we're giving you to go and explore all of those resources and have that to reference at any point. So thanks so much for joining us.
Cheers.
Cheers. Have a wonderful day. Bye.